Taking inspiration from both the filming techniques to capture story moments and cutscenes, as well as basing entire levels and characters on silver screen flicks, some of the greatest games ever made wouldn't have happened at all if not for the films which inspired them. That doesn't make them bad though. Hell, half the directors in Hollywood wouldn't have a career if it was a crime to liberally take from other movies. Looking at you, Tarantino. But it's worth noting just how much material these great games appropriated, re ripped off, from their big screen heroes. I'm Josh from WhatCulture.com, and these are 8 video games you didn't realize ripped off famous movies. First up, an honorable mention, Metal Gear Solid 2, Austin Powers. Hideo Kojima absolutely loves movies, so it's no surprise that his Metal Gear Solid series is chock full of references to cinema greats. However, there is one completely random film often cited as having a huge impact on Metal Gear Solid 2, Austin Powers. Sure, Solid Snake himself is an international man of mystery, but how the satirical spy franchise managed to influence a game so deeply in love with its own pseudoscience and grand philosophical statements is anybody's guess. Even Kojima himself has refused to explain just how Mike Myers' sex pest actually informed his own creation. My guess? It probably comes through in the scene where you're following around a butt-naked Raiden. Or maybe the Colonel wasn't just a rogue AI after all, but a fembot the whole time. Alright, maybe scratch that last one. Number 8. Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2, The Rock. Every COD game has its fair share of movie-inspired moments, but Modern Warfare 2 took that to the extreme, lifting elements directly from Aliens, which the previous title similarly did, admittedly, as well as including a Red Dawn-inspired invasion of the USA. The developers pay homage to a whole host of 80s and 90s action movies. However, it's one flick specifically, The Rock, whose influence is most felt. Most obviously, this comes across in the campaign as well as the Spec Ops mission Breach and Clear, which features levels modelled on the prison shower shootout from that movie. It's not only the visual design which takes cues from Michael Bay's best film though, but a few plot elements as well, such as an army general going rogue after losing his men. It's not always beat for beat, but The Rock's fingerprints are all over this game, and it's awesome. Number 7. Max Payne 3, Man on Fire / Domino. Throwing out the pulpy noir stories Remedy drew from the first 2 games, new developers Rockstar instead looked towards the visually oversaturated action movies from the early 2000s, specifically the ones made by the late great Tony Scott for Max Payne 3. From a visual perspective, Max Payne 3 takes heavily from both Man on Fire and Domino. The latter's aesthetic is immediately apparent, with erratic editing and flashes of colour being used to reflect Max's hazy, alcohol-fueled perspective. Man on Fire's biggest stylistic impact comes through in the environment, as well as in the text pop-ups which highlight key dialogue exchanges. More generally though, the ever-present yellow tinge and stylized editing is Tony Scott through and through. The plot itself is also reminiscent of Man on Fire, with both Max and Denzel Washington's character being hired as a bodyguard for a family and then going on a rampage when a member of said family is kidnapped. Swap out Mexico City for Brazil and you've pretty much got the same setup. Number 6. Homefront Red Dawn. Though it was poised to be the next big thing, Homefront shipped with little fanfare in 2011, with the biggest criticisms taking aim at the developers squandering such a great premise. Focused on the invasion and hostile takeover of the USA by North Korea, the game follows a band of American resistance fighters attempting to wage guerrilla warfare to take their country back. If this sounds familiar, it's because it's pretty much the plot of the 80s cult classic Red Dawn. The only major difference is that movie's villain is the Soviet Union, rather than North Korea. Funnily enough though, the movie's remake, which came out the year after Homefront, would actually take inspiration from the video game which it inspired, similarly using North Korea as the invading army. Unfortunately though, Homefront is nowhere near as fun as its movie influence, and neither it nor its sequel properly capitalized on this great setting. Number 5. Heavy Rain 7/Minority Report. While other titles like Metal Gear Solid relied on filmic techniques, David Cage's projects were both praised and criticized for essentially being interactive movies rather than actual video games. Heavy Rain is no different in this regard, taking huge cues from David Fincher's Seven and the director's work in general, really, to craft its dark crime thriller plot. The seemingly perpetual nighttime setting, even during the day everything is dreary and dour, the constant downpour, and urban environments that look like they're being held together by sticky tape all evoke Fincher's classic. Not to mention the central story, all about a calm and collected killer who enjoys toying with his pursuers. Interestingly though, there are also shades of Minority Report in there as well, especially when it comes down to the two main characters, both of which have a kidnapped son named Sean. Fortunately, his name isn't shouted quite so much in the movie as it is in the game.
Sean! 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 Sean!
Number 4. LA Noire, LA Confidential. LA Noire's love of classic hard-boiled movies is obvious well from the title alone, but the detective game actually owes the most to the relatively recent LA Confidential. Not only does it have the same obsession with breaking down the artifice of LA's glitzy exterior, but every character is pretty much based on someone from that movie. James Cromwell's Captain Dudley Smith is a dead ringer for LA Noire's Captain James Donnelly, while Guy Pearce's Exley has the same career-focused, by-the-book approach to detective work that makes Cole Phelps such a goddamn wet blanket. Kevin Spacey's under-the-counter dealings as narcotics cop Jack Vicen as Jack is also the perfect stand-in for the sleazy Vice Squad's Roy Earl, but it's not just character archetypes the two projects have in common. The similarities are far too extensive to chart in a minute here, so just know that LA Confidential is the perfect continuation if you're wanting to fill a void after finishing such a uniquely engaging game. Number 3. Spec Ops The Line, Apocalypse Now. Telling a grim dark tale about the horrors of war, Spec Ops The Line story is all about one soldier's descent into madness, while trapped in the almost alien-like landscape of Dubai, which is being cut off from the rest of the world by a sandstorm. The general narrative takes inspiration from Apocalypse Now, which is similarly about a group of soldiers entering foreign territory to take down a colonel who's gone rogue and embrace the brutality of his lawless environment. Diving headfirst into themes of PTSD, the movie also informs the game's visual style, especially in its scorched earth depiction of war. However, both projects are fundamentally based on Joseph Conrad's Heart of Darkness, to the point where the villain of the game is literally named after the author. It wears its influences on its sleeve, and it's all the better for it. Number 2. Battlefield Bad Company, Three Kings. Giving the franchise a personality beyond just running around for a minute and then getting shot in the back, Bad Company's campaign introduced fans to a ragtag gang of AWOL soldiers who spent their spare time sticking smiley faces on grenades and trying to get rich, baby. This plot was pretty much ripped entirely from Three Kings, well, swapping out the desert setting anyway, a movie starring George Clooney which similarly followed a breakaway group of soldiers during the Gulf War attempting to rip off Saddam Hussein by stealing some of his gold. The banter between the squad was very much inspired by this movie as well, even if Bad Company pushes that element slightly further than in the film. There's also shades of Kelly's Heroes in there as well, another comedy war movie, this time set in World War II, about a bunch of misfits attempting to steal Nazi treasure. Both were great sources to draw from, and it made Bad Company the perfect antidote to modern warfare's super serious plot at the time. Number 1. Tomb Raider, The Descent. A game about being stranded on a desert island and solving the mystery of how a powerful weather goddess stops people from leaving might, not on the surface, seem to have all that much in common with a gritty horror movie about a bunch of people being tormented by monsters whilst trapped in a cave, but the similarities between Tomb Raider and The Descent are uncanny. While the narratives themselves don't share too many of the same beats, the game's portrayal of Lara as a survivor is directly informed by The Descent's Sarah. The two transform into genuine badasses over their respective stories, both armed with pickaxes no less, taking untold punishment and occasionally even falling into some blood pools along the way. The horror inspirations are surprisingly at home here though, and help shape Lara into a far edgier hero than her corn-boobed predecessor. I mean, not literally, of course, look at those polygons. So that's our list. I don't know what you guys think down in the comments below. Did you notice the similarities between these video games and these movies, or do you just not care? Either way, while you're down there, could you give us a like, share, subscribe, and head over to WhatCulture.com for more lists and news like this every single day. Even if you don't, though, I've been Josh, you've been watching WhatCulture, and I'll see you soon. Bye.